My parents forced me to work for free in their restaurant for 4 years. Not summers, not weekends to help out. 4 years, full time. While my friends were building careers and paying off student loans and figuring out who they were going to be, I was behind a counter in a strip mall in Tulsa, Oklahoma, working 12-hour shifts 6 days a week in the family restaurant that my parents owned and that they had decided I was obligated to operate. When I asked about pay, my mother said, "We paid for your entire life. Your food, your school, your clothes, everything you have is because of us. This is how you pay it back." My father said, "In our culture, children contribute to the family. That is how families survive." I said, "I need to build my own life." They said, "This is your life. This is the family." 4 years. I was 26 when I finally quit. I want to tell you what happened in the year after that. I want to tell you about the brand I built in a spare bedroom in an apartment I could barely afford. I want to tell you about the specific moment I understood that the restaurant my parents owned sat inside a commercial property loan that had been quietly defaulting for 18 months. And I want to tell you about the morning I walked into the bank and had a conversation that changed the relationship between me and my parents permanently. I am now their landlord. I want to say that clearly so you understand it completely. My parents live in the house that is connected to the commercial property that holds the debt I purchased from their lender. The debt is mine. The leverage is mine. The conversation we had when they understood this was the most honest conversation our family has ever had. This story goes back further than the restaurant. It goes back to a childhood that was built around a specific and unspoken contract that I did not agree to and was never given the option to negotiate. I need to tell you that part first because nothing else makes sense without it. Like this right now, subscribe and hit the bell, share this with someone, and drop a comment telling me if you have ever felt like your family treated your loyalty as a debt. Let us go back to Tulsa. My name is Jasmine Park, and I am 28 years old. I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in a neighborhood called Midtown, in a house on a residential street that my parents had bought in 2002 when they immigrated from South Korea and decided that Tulsa, not the coasts, was the city that made financial sense for the restaurant they wanted to open. My father's name is Sungjin Park. He goes by Steve with customers. He is 57 years old and came to the United States at 32 with a culinary background and a business dream and the specific immigrant energy of someone who has decided that sacrifice now produces stability later. He is a hard man in the way of someone who has never fully put down the weight of starting over in a country where everything from the language to the legal system to the way business relationships work was different from what he had known. My mother's name is Hyunya. She goes by Helen. She is 55. She is the operations person in the family while my father is the creative one. She manages the money, the vendor relationships, the staffing decisions, and the general administration of whatever situation the family is in. She is warm in the specific way of someone who expresses love through feeding people and buying practical things and remembering every detail about what everyone in her orbit needs. She is also deeply committed to a model of family that places the collective above the individual in ways that feel natural to her, and that felt, to me, increasingly like a cage as I got older. I am the older child by 4 years. My brother Danny is 24, a junior at the University of Tulsa on a partial scholarship, and has been largely protected from the restaurant obligation by virtue of being younger and by being in school. The school protection for him was not available to me because I graduated at a time when the restaurant needed help, and the math of my parents' situation meant my timing was wrong. The restaurant is called Soul Garden. It is a Korean barbecue and comfort food place in a strip mall on Peoria Avenue that my parents opened when I was 8 years old. For the first decade, it was genuinely successful in the modest way of a local family restaurant with a loyal customer base. My father's cooking was the real thing. People came back for it specifically. The lunch business was strong because of the nearby office park. Dinner on weekends was consistently good. I grew up in that restaurant in the way that children of restaurant owners grow up in restaurants. homework at the corner booth after school, learning to run the register at 12, helping with prep on holidays, covering the front of house when a staff member called out. The restaurant was the 5th member of our family. I did not mind any of this as a child. The restaurant felt like home in a specific way that the restaurant always feels like home to the children of people who pour themselves into it. What I minded was what happened after college. I studied business at the University of Oklahoma on a merit scholarship. 4 years, graduated at 22 with a marketing and entrepreneurship concentration. I came home to Tulsa in May with specific and practical plans. I had 2 job offers, one from a marketing agency in Tulsa that would have been a solid start in my field, one from a consumer products company in Dallas that was higher paying and would have required a move. I came home to tell my parents about the options and to help in the restaurant for the summer while I figured out which direction to take. Summer turned into something else. My mother sat me down in August. She said, "Your father needs surgery on his shoulder. The recovery is going to take 3 months. We need you here. Please stay through the end of the year." I called the Tulsa agency and asked about a delayed start. They said yes, January. January came. My father was recovered, but the restaurant had gotten used to having me there. My mother said, "We are short-staffed. Just stay through spring. We will hire someone." Spring came. Nobody was hired. In April, 14 months after my college graduation, I sat at the kitchen table at home, and I asked my parents directly when I was going to be allowed to take the job. My mother said, "We cannot afford to pay for staff right now. You are family. Family does this." I said, "I need income. I need to build my career." My father said, "This is your career. This restaurant is the family's investment. When we are gone, it belongs to you and Danny. You are building your own future." I said, "I want to choose my own future." He said, "You chose it when we raised you." That sentence, "You chose it when we raised you." I sat with that sentence for 3 years. I kept working. I learned every system in that restaurant at depth. I managed the vendors. I rebuilt the social media presence from scratch. I redesigned the menu layout. I implemented an online ordering system. I hired 2 good employees and trained them both. I made Soul Garden operationally stronger than it had been since the years when the lunch business peaked. And I was paid nothing. No salary. A small allowance my mother called household money that covered my car insurance and personal expenses. Nothing that resembled compensation for full-time management work. I tracked every hour in a notebook. 4 years, 6 days a week, averaging 54 hours per week. By the time I quit, I had worked 11,200 hours without pay. I calculated the market rate for the work I had been doing and multiplied it by those hours. The number was significant. I did not use it as a weapon immediately. I held it, and I planned. I quit on a Thursday morning in October. Not dramatically. I sat my parents down at the kitchen table before the restaurant opened, and I told them clearly and without anger that I was leaving the restaurant and that I was going to pursue my own career starting immediately. My mother said, "You cannot just leave. We need you." I said, "I know you need me. That is exactly why I am leaving." My father said, "After everything we have done for you, after everything we sacrificed." I said, "I know what you sacrificed. I also know what I have contributed. I have given this restaurant 4 years of my professional life without compensation. I am grateful for my upbringing. I have repaid it 100 times over in hours worked. We are even." My mother started crying. My father said something in Korean that I understood and will not repeat. I said, "I love you. I will always love you, and I am leaving today." I moved into an apartment in the Brookside neighborhood of Tulsa that I had been quietly arranging for 3 weeks. 1 bedroom, month-to-month lease. $840 a month that I was covering with savings I had accumulated from the small amounts I had been able to set aside from the allowance money over 4 years. Plus a part-time social media consulting job I had started doing for 2 local businesses in my limited free time at nights and on Sundays. The savings were $12,000. $12,000 to start a life and a business at 26. The business I had been planning was called Ember Creative, a social media and content marketing agency for independent restaurants. The specific niche came from 4 years of building Soul Garden's online presence and watching the difference that real content strategy made to a small restaurant's visibility. I had watched competitors with worse food and better Instagram accounts consistently draw lines, while places with excellent food and zero digital presence struggled. The restaurant industry needed this service and could afford it at the price point I was designing around, which was different from the pricing at most marketing agencies because most marketing agencies served larger clients and priced accordingly. I understood restaurant owners. I spoke their language. I understood their hours, their margins, their relationship with customers, their specific pride in the food they made. I was going to build the agency for them. The first week after leaving Soul Garden, I built the Ember Creative website. I put together a portfolio using the Soul Garden social media work I had done, with my parents' implicit permission, because it was work I had done and they had benefited from it. I wrote 3 case study-style posts about specific things I had improved at the restaurant. I built a service package structure with 3 tiers and pricing that I had researched against the Tulsa market. I launched on a Tuesday. My first inquiry came in 48 hours from an Indian restaurant in the Cherry Street neighborhood that had been open for 2 years and was struggling with visibility. I met with the owner, a man named Ravi, on a Thursday afternoon. He said, "What do you know about marketing restaurants specifically?" I said, 4 years of running the social and content strategy for a Korean restaurant in this city. I can show you the account growth numbers and the correlation with foot traffic if you want to see them." He looked at my portfolio. He said, "How much?" I told him. He said, "That is less than the agency I spoke with last month." I said, "I have lower overhead. I specialize in restaurants. You are getting more relevant experience at a better price." He signed a 3-month contract that afternoon. That contract was $800 a month. $800 a month was not going to sustain me, but it was the first dollar that Ember Creative earned, and the first dollar changed the psychology of everything. I called my friend Keisha that evening. Keisha had been my closest friend since our sophomore year of college. She was now working in commercial real estate in Tulsa and was the person who had kept me sane through the restaurant years by being available for the phone calls where I needed to say the things out loud that I could not say to my parents. I said, "First client signed." She said, "Ravi at Saffron." I said, "You know him." She said, "I showed him commercial space 2 years ago, small world. How do you feel?" I said, "Like I finally started." She said, "You have been started for a long time. You are just finally building it for yourself." She was right about that. Over the next 4 months, I signed 7 more restaurant clients. Word of mouth in the independent restaurant community in Tulsa was faster than I had expected. Restaurant owners talked to each other at the food supplier. They talked at the Tulsa Restaurant Association events that I started attending specifically to build those relationships. They talked over drinks after closing time. The thing they said about Ember Creative was that it was the agency that actually understood their world. That was the whole value proposition, and it was true. By month 5, Ember Creative had 8 clients and monthly recurring revenue of $9,200. I called Keisha and told her the number. She said, "Okay, now I need to tell you something." I said, "Tell me." She said, "I found something in the commercial property records that you need to know about." What Keisha told me on that Tuesday evening changed the direction of everything. She said, "Jasmine, the commercial property on Peoria where Soul Garden is located, your parents own the building or they lease." I said, "They own it. My father bought the building in 2014. He refinanced the house to do it. He said owning the building was the long-term security." She said, "The commercial loan on that property, I pulled the county records. The lender is First Community Bank. The loan is flagged in the recent defaulted and delinquent filings. I sat very still. I said, defaulted. She said, delinquent for 18 months. It has not gone to foreclosure yet, but they are in the late-stage workout process with the bank. The bank has a right to sell the debt or foreclose within the next several months if a resolution is not reached. I said, how much is the loan? She said, the remaining principal on the commercial property note is $220,000. I said, and the house? She said, the house refinance from 2014 was a separate note. It has been current, but the commercial property is in serious trouble. I sat in my apartment and looked at the wall for a moment. I said, Keisha, can you help me understand the process for purchasing a distressed commercial loan from a bank? She was quiet for a second. She said, Jasmine. I said, tell me the process. She said, a bank in a late-stage workout situation on a delinquent commercial loan is sometimes open to selling the note to a third-party investor at a discount to the face value. The investor pays less than the outstanding balance, receives the full note, and then has the rights and options the bank had regarding collection and enforcement. I said, so if I purchase the note? She said, you would be their lender. I said, how much would a bank discount a note like this in this situation? She said, depends on the specific circumstances and the bank's appetite for clearing the problem off their books. In distressed situations, I have seen discounts from 15 to 40% of face value. I said, $220,000 at 40% discount is $132,000. She said, yes. I said, I have $47,000 in the business account right now. She said, you would need outside capital. I said, tell me everything about how this works. She told me. I spent the next 3 weeks learning everything I could about distressed debt acquisition, commercial note purchases, and the specific legal structure of how a third-party note buyer relates to the original borrower. I hired an attorney named Carol Webb who specialized in commercial real estate transactions. Carol was direct and clear and walked me through every piece of the process without making me feel stupid for not having known it already. She said, the first thing you need is to approach the bank. You need to find out if they are willing to discuss a note sale and at what price. You go in as an investor, not as the borrower's daughter. The bank does not need to know your relationship to the property. I said, is that ethical? She said, you are a third-party investor making a legitimate commercial inquiry. The relationship you have to the borrower is your business. The bank is assessing whether your offer solves their problem. If it does, they will sell. I said, what do I need to show them? She said, proof of funds or a credible financing plan, a letter of intent, and a clean transaction history. The financing was the challenge. $47,000 was not enough. I needed a minimum of $100,000 to make an offer at a discount that the bank would consider seriously. I called Keisha. I said, I need to tell you what I am actually trying to do. She said, I figured it out 3 weeks ago. I said, will you invest? She said, how much do you need from me? I said, $50,000. I will cover the rest from the business account and a small loan I can get against future receivables. She said, what do I get? I said, equity in the note at the proportion of your investment. When the note resolves, you receive your capital plus 15% return. She was quiet for a moment. She said, Jasmine, if your parents find out you are their lender, this is going to change your family forever. I said, my family changed forever the day they told me I owed them my career. This is the response to that change. She said, you are sure? I said, I am completely sure. She said, okay, I am in. Subscribe right now, because the next part is where I walk into that bank, and the conversation that happened is something you absolutely cannot miss. The meeting with First Community Bank happened on a Friday morning in February. Carol Webb came with me. She did the professional framing, and I provided the substance behind it. We sat across from a commercial loan officer named Greg Patterson, who had the specific tired energy of someone who manages problem assets and whose primary daily emotion is relief when a problem gets resolved. Greg looked at the file. He said, "You are interested in acquiring the note on the commercial property at this address." Carol said, "That is correct. Our client is prepared to move quickly with clean funds." Greg said, "The outstanding principal is $222,000. We have 18 months of delinquency and accumulated fees, bringing the total balance to $247,000. Carol said, "Our client is prepared to offer $140,000 for the note, as is, with a 30-day close." Greg looked at the number. He said, "That is a significant discount." Carol said, "The property is delinquent 18 months. The borrower has demonstrated an inability to service the note. Our client is solving your problem with clean capital in 30 days. Greg said, "I need to take this to committee." Carol said, "We understand. We are available for a decision by end of next week." We left. In the car, Carol said, "He is going to take it to committee and the committee is going to say yes. The bank wants this off their books. 140 is real money and it closes fast." She was right. The committee came back in 4 business days. They countered at $160,000. Carol advised me to counter $150. They accepted $152,000. The close happened 3 weeks later. I transferred $152,000 to First Community Bank and received an assignment of the commercial property note on the Soul Garden building on Peoria Avenue. I was now my parents' lender. I held the note for 2 weeks before I told them. I needed those 2 weeks to think through how I was going to approach the conversation. Not the confrontation, because confrontation was not what I wanted, but the conversation that would reveal the reality of the situation and open the door to a different kind of relationship. Carol advised me to notify them formally first, which was the legally required step regardless of the personal dimension. She sent a letter on behalf of the new note holder informing them of the assignment of the debt, the contact information for the new lender, and the terms going forward. My parents received the letter on a Tuesday. My mother called me 2 hours after the mail arrived. She said, "Jasmine, we received a letter about the restaurant loan." I said, "I know." She said, "The lender changed, some company called JK Holdings." I said, "Mom, I need to come over tonight. Can we have dinner?" She said, "Yes, of course. What is this about?" I said, "I will explain tonight." I drove to the house that evening. My father was at the kitchen table when I arrived. My mother had made food because my mother makes food when she senses that something important is happening and feeding people is the way she prepares for important things. I sat down. My father said, "What is this letter about?" I said, "I want to tell you both something and I need you to let me finish before you respond." They looked at me. I said, "The commercial loan on the restaurant building was in serious trouble, 18 months delinquent. The bank was close to foreclosure. If they had foreclosed, you would have lost the building and the restaurant and potentially faced a deficiency judgment for the remaining balance." My mother's hand went to her mouth. My father said, "How do you know this?" I said, "I looked into it. I have contacts in commercial real estate. I found out the situation." I said, "I purchased the note from the bank. JK Holdings is my company. The initials stand for Jasmine and Keisha. I am now your lender." The kitchen was completely silent. My father looked at the table. My mother looked at me. My father said, "You bought our debt." I said, "Yes." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because if the bank had foreclosed, you would have lost everything. You would have lost the restaurant and you would have had no way to recover. Despite everything that happened between us, I was not willing to let that happen to you." My mother started crying. My father said, "What do you want?" I said, "I want the monthly payment to continue at the same amount. I am not changing the terms. The interest rate stays the same. The payment schedule stays the same. He said, and I said, and I want us to have an honest conversation about what happened over the past 4 years. He looked at me. I said, Dad, I worked 11,000 hours in that restaurant without pay. I managed your vendors, rebuilt your online presence, trained your staff, and ran the operations for 4 years. I did it because you told me I owed it to you. I want you to know that I disagree with that. I always disagreed with that, and I want us to stop pretending otherwise. My father was very still. He said, You are my daughter, we are family. I said, yes, and family deserves honesty. What you asked of me was not fair. Loving you does not change that truth. I love you, and what you did was wrong. Both things are true. My mother said, We thought we were teaching you. We thought the restaurant was your future. I said, You thought that. You were wrong. And instead of acknowledging it when I tried to leave, you said I owed you for my childhood. My mother looked at my father. He sat with everything I had said for a long time. Then he said, We were afraid. I said, Tell me what you mean. He said, The restaurant was failing. We were afraid to tell you how bad it was. If you had known the real numbers, you might have left sooner. We needed you, and we were ashamed to say we needed you, so we told you that you owed us instead. That sentence landed in the room. I sat with it. He had just told me the real truth, not the version that made it a cultural obligation or a family value. The actual truth, which was that they had been scared and had managed their fear by converting it into a claim on my loyalty rather than by asking honestly for my help. I said, If you had told me the truth, I would have stayed for a while. I would have helped because I wanted to help, not because I was told I had no choice. He said, I know. My mother said, I know. The kitchen was quiet. My father said, What happens now with the note? I said, You make the monthly payment. The terms are the same. In 3 years, when the balance is paid down significantly, we can discuss refinancing with a bank or continuing with me as the lender. You have options. He said, And the restaurant? I said, The restaurant is yours. I am not trying to take it. I am trying to make sure you do not lose it. He looked at me for a long time. He said, You spent your own money to save our business. I said, Yes. He said, After we told you that you owed us. I said, Yes. He said, Why? I said, Because I love you, not because I owe you, because I love you. That is the difference I wanted you to understand. It has been 8 months since that kitchen table conversation. Ember Creative is at 22 clients now and monthly revenue of $26,000. I hired my first employee in March, a content creator named Deja who has been transforming the quality of the visual work we produce for our clients. I am working on a partnership model that would allow other freelancers to work under the Ember Creative brand on a revenue-sharing basis, which would let me scale without the overhead risk of full staff before the revenue supports it. The note on Soul Garden is being serviced. My parents have made every payment since the assignment on time. The business, with the stabilized debt situation and some operational improvements I helped them think through in a few conversations we have had since October, is performing better. My father hired a new chef assistant, which has taken some pressure off him physically. My mother is less exhausted than she was. We talk differently now. The kitchen table conversation opened something. My father and I have had 4 real conversations since then. Not practical conversations about the restaurant or the family finances. Real ones. About what he expected when he came to America and what it actually was. About what he thought it meant to be a parent and what he is still working out. About the gap between what he intended for me and what I actually experienced. He said something last month that I keep thinking about. He said, When I was your age and working for my father in Korea, I worked without pay for 3 years. I thought that was how family worked. I did not know there was another way. I said, Did you like it, working for your father without pay? He thought about it. He said, No. I said, That is the thing, Dad. You recreated something you hated because it was the only model you had. He said, Yes. I said, I am not recreating it. I am building something different. He said, I see that. He said it with the specific tone of a man who means more than the words contain. He saw more than just the business. He saw a person who had made choices about who she was going to be that were different from the choices the people before her had made. That is what I wanted him to see. Danny, my brother, called me a few weeks after the kitchen table night. My parents had told him what had happened. He is 24 and thoughtful in the way of someone who has been watching a complicated family situation from a protected position and who has thought carefully about what it meant. He said, Jasmine, I want to say something. I said, say it. He said, I knew what they were doing to you was wrong. I said it to Mom twice. She told me it was different for you because you were older. I should have pushed harder. I said, Danny, you were a kid. He said, I was old enough to know. I said, you are not responsible for what they decided. He said, I want you to know I see it, what you built, how you handled all of it. I want to build something too, and I want to build it honestly. I said, then build it honestly. That is the whole thing. He said, will you help me when I am ready? I said, yes, whenever you are ready, no debt attached. He laughed. The honest version of our family relationship is better than the managed version was. Not easier, better. The payments come in every month from my parents. The restaurant continues. Ember Creative continues. The two lines of my life exist in the same city and no longer pull against each other. I drove past Soul Garden last Sunday afternoon. There was a lunch crowd visible through the window. My father's cooking is the real thing. It has always been the real thing. The restaurant deserves to survive, and I am glad it is surviving. I sat in my car for a minute outside the strip mall, where I had worked for 4 years without pay. I thought about the girl who was behind that counter at 22, who was told she owed her childhood back, who tracked every hour in a notebook because something in her understood that the record was going to matter someday. She was right to keep the record. She was right to leave. She was right to come back on her own terms. The terms are mine now. I am in the Ember Creative office on a Thursday morning in Tulsa. It is a real office, not the spare bedroom. A 1,200 square foot space in the Cherry Street neighborhood with a table for client meetings and a wall where I put the things that matter to me, photos of the restaurants we work with, a framed printout of the first client contract, a card from Keisha that says you were always going to figure this out. 22 restaurant clients, a team that is starting to feel like a real team, revenue that lets me make real decisions about the future. And on the first of every month, a payment from my parents that covers the note on the Soul Garden building. I am their landlord, and I am their daughter. Both things are true simultaneously. Here is what I want to say before I close this story. Your love for your family is real. The love does not disappear because a line was crossed. But love and obligation are different things, and the people who love you most are sometimes the ones most likely to confuse the two. My parents told me I owed them my career because they raised me. They believed it. They were wrong about it. Their belief in the wrong thing did not make it right. You are allowed to love someone and also refuse what they ask of you. You are allowed to help someone from a position of strength and choice, rather than from a position of guilt and obligation. The help I gave my parents, buying their debt, saving their restaurant, is real help. It is more help than 4 years of unpaid labor produced, because I gave it freely from a position I built for myself. It was not extracted from me. It was chosen by me. That difference is the whole story. Thank you for staying through this. It means everything. Drop a comment below. Tell me if your family has ever confused your love for them with an obligation. I want to read every response. I read all of them. Subscribe and hit the bell. We are here every single week with a story exactly like this one. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Someone who is working for free and being told it is family. Someone who needs permission to leave and build something that is theirs. Tell them the love is real, and so are your limits.